5 years had passed since Sarah's husband's passing, and she still missed him every single day. It had been the day of their anniversary when her daughter had come back from school, a smile plastered on her face with a backpack full of cash. Sarah's confusion soon turned to shock when her daughter exclaimed, "Daddy gave me this backpack!" This had to be some cruel joke, Sarah thought. Pushing aside her grief, she was determined to find out what had happened. Sarah had no idea what to think. She looked at the backpack and still couldn't believe what had just happened. Of course, it couldn't be Eric who had given this to Polly. They had buried him years ago. But then, who was it? And even more importantly, why had this man given them the money? She had so many questions. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't. And hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. She carefully grabbed the backpack and zipped it all the way open, holding her breath as she looked inside it. She had never seen this much cash before in her entire life. And then she realized that this was a problem. Obviously, she wanted to take this to the police. She was determined to find out who this strange man was and what had driven him to do this. But on the other hand, she did not want to lose the money, and she was scared that if she went to the police, they would take it from her. What should she do now? Back at the school. Perhaps she was still too young to understand what had happened to her father. Yeah, maybe. We'll see, Paul. Minutes later, they finally arrived at the school. Sarah and Polly quickly went inside the building and they knocked on Teacher Clara's door. "Oh, hi there! Did you forget something, Polly?" she asked, surprised to see them. Clara nodded, noticing that it was something serious, and led Sarah to her desk. "I came by to ask you if you have seen anything unusual after school today," Sarah began, and she explained what happened. Teacher Clara's eyes grew wide upon hearing the story, and she put a hand in front of her mouth as she gasped. "Oh my, surely someone must have seen something," she replied, and she left the classroom. Sarah nervously waited for her to come back to the police station. "Paul, honey, I just need you to tell that same story to an officer in a minute, okay? The police will help us find—" "Daddy," Sarah said, deciding to pretend like she believed her daughter. They walked inside and Sarah was getting increasingly nervous. "Hello, can I speak to an officer, please?" she asked the receptionist. They stopped before a glass door. "Detective Mark will see you now." Sarah, sensing the detective's disbelief, opened the backpack. The room fell silent as the gravity of the find settled in. "Detective, my main concern is Polly's safety. You have my word. We'll take this seriously and investigate thoroughly." The sheer amount of cash, the mention of Polly's daddy, the mystery man, he sounded more convinced now, the intrigue of the situation pulling him in. Mark called in a forensics expert. Using a special light, fingerprints were sought on the bills. Sarah watched with bated breath, hoping that something, anything, would lead them to the man who had approached Polly. Inside were familiar yet painful memories. Pictures of Eric, newspaper clippings, and official reports. "Mrs. Thompson," Mark began gently, "I need you to recollect everything about your husband. It might help us connect the dots." Sarah took a deep breath, tears glistening as she revisited the past. "People in town have reported seeing a man resembling Eric." Sarah's heart raced. "That's impossible," she whispered, but curiosity and hope were evident in her eyes. "It's unverified," Mark continued, "but the descriptions are eerily similar. Multiple accounts from different locations." "All right, let's do this together. We'll revisit the places he was seen. Maybe we'll find someone who knows more." They quickly charted out a plan, marking potential spots on a city map. Mark assured, "If he's out there, Mrs. Thompson, we'll find him." Sarah and Mark entered the bustling diner, the scent of coffee filling the air. He pondered a moment. "Yeah, I've seen him, always looking over his shoulder, like he's hiding from something." "He had these odd habits," the owner continued. "Always sat facing the door. He'd watch the reflection in the window mirror constantly." They discovered an apartment rented under a pseudonym. However, inside lay telltale signs. A watch Sarah had gifted Eric, books they had shared. The apartment seemed lived in but temporarily abandoned. Just as the first rays of dawn began to light the horizon, a figure approached the apartment. This man wasn't Eric. He was unfamiliar, yet he walked with a confident stride, unlocking the apartment door swiftly. Without hesitation, Mark stepped out of the car, intent on confronting the unfamiliar man. As he neared, the man spotted him and darted away. Mark shouted, urging Sarah to call backup, and bolted after the stranger, their footsteps echoing through the early morning streets. Together, they cornered him in an alley. Mark swiftly handcuffed him. Both hoped this man would have the answers they so desperately sought. The stranger's eyes darted nervously. Mark bombarded him with questions about Eric, but the man remained tight-lipped, feigning ignorance. "I'm John," he finally admitted, his voice laden with resignation. Sarah and Mark listened intently, trying to discern truth from fiction. As John delved deeper, he painted a picture of Eric's bravery and the perils he faced. "He uncovered some dark corporate secrets," John confessed. "They wanted him silenced. Faking his death became a necessary ploy, not just to save himself, but to protect Sarah and Polly too. The backpack filled with cash was a lifeline crafted by Eric. It was meant to help you two disappear," John divulged, his voice tinged with regret. "To give you a chance at a new beginning, far from the dangers that now hunted Eric." Hesitantly, "Why?" John pulled out an encrypted phone. With Sarah and Polly anxiously watching, he sent a coded message arranging for Eric to meet them. Their rendezvous spot, an old abandoned warehouse on the city's outskirts, known only to a few. The anticipation was palpable as they drove to the designated location. A lone figure stepped out from the shadows. Eric. The scene was surreal, a family torn apart by circumstances, now face to face once again. Sarah's eyes brimmed with tears and Polly ran to embrace her father, their bond undiminished by the years. It quickly became clear that the family's location hadn't remained as secret as they'd hoped. They had been tracked. Suddenly, a barrage of lights illuminated the scene, followed by the unmistakable sound of police sirens. Mark, always the astute detective, had foreseen the potential danger. Their unexpected advantage gave the family a fighting chance against the encroaching corporate agents. Flashing blue and red lights cut through the warehouse's murky ambiance. The police, armed and prepared for conflict, formed a protective barrier around Sarah, Polly, Eric, and Mark. Once things calmed, Eric, with tears in his eyes, faced his family and the longing to be with them again. "I never wanted any of this," he admitted, his voice trembling. Embracing his family, Eric hoped for a chance at redemption and a fresh start. With the evidence Eric provided, the corporation's dark secrets were exposed, leading to legal actions that would ensure they faced the consequences of their actions. Their influence couldn't shield them from the weight of justice any longer. The family, once torn apart by secrets and danger, now acknowledged the long road ahead. They embraced therapy, sought counseling, and leaned on each other for support. Healing was a process, but together they were determined to rebuild their shattered lives. The decision was made to leave the town full of painful memories and lurking threats. They'd start afresh, somewhere safe, where they could leave the past behind and move towards a brighter future. As they packed their belongings, each item held a memory, photographs, trinkets, and mementos from a life they'd leave behind. They carried these memories with them, a reminder of the resilience that had carried them through their trials. With their past firmly behind them, the family gathered in their car, looking at one another with newfound determination. They expressed mutual promises to cherish each moment, to never take their second chance for granted, and to build a brighter tomorrow. As they drove away from the town that held so many painful memories, the weight of their past slowly lifted. She closed with a hopeful message for the future, echoing their shared promise to make the most of their second chance at life.